Hello, and welcome to the Anthropohistory and Colonialism channel. I am Victor Collins, anthropologist, and today we are gonna continue our course Galilee and the Jewish Revolt, Roman Empire, Nazarenes and Jews, the conflict that shaped the age of Pisces, with the lecture The Invention of S.Paul and the Emergence of the Barbarians. A approach that no one has yet told you about. So I hope you all stay with us together until the end of this course, and please make sure that you like, subscribe, divulgate to your friends, and let's go. So with the changing of the Masonic functions and titles within the Nazarene order in direction to the fortifying of the cult of the demiurge, this attempt is related with the pivotal participation of Saul Josephus in relation to his social status as Jewish philosopher, Greek Gnostic, and Roman citizen, in the incredible involvement of his presence as a chief of police for the Pharisees and ambassador of Edessa, in the time when he was arresting the adepts of the astrological cults and putting them into prison within the region of the Galilee, just as the long um, the long plot allied to Rome and the Flavians when Rome was besieging the Galilee, expanding and dominating throughout the region with its army's presence. Um, so within favors, combinations and accords in amidst the Roman domain and expansion, Josephus has followed Vespasian until the siege of Jotapata, and even the crucifixion of the leaders of the Jewish revolt, the war on the Galilee, that happened in Tekoa, Her, um, Her, Heredia, yeah, Tekoa, Heredia, um, ordaining by Saul Josephus that King Isatis Manu of Edessa was being brought down from the cross, and this event comes to us as when Joseph of Arimathea is in the presence of the Nazarene Christ that is still crucified. So what happened is, after the siege of Jotapata, which is a very important event in the War of the Galilee, when Rome took over that area and besieged with its army, uh, the plot that was taken ahead, that was realized in the relation between Vespasian and Josephus, was coming to its climax, right? As a great example of deception, as how Rome works through treason was exactly this articulation of the treason between Josephus and Vespasian in the siege of Jotapata, when the Jewish synagogue has been besieged by the Roman army, and um, the brigade was warning that it would deliver an attack, a blow, and then what happened is Josephus and his Pharisee partners were inside the synagogue, knowing that Vespasian was preparing a blow outside, and instead of dying in the hand of the enemy, right? Let's remember that Josephus was already working with Vespasian in this plot, and the treason would soon after follow. Okay, so they played a bet on their lives. Okay, so the term is excuse me. Yeah, they played a prize draw over their lives. Okay, in an incredible, skillful way. Josephus remained the last one to be picked in the prize draw, right? Which means that his partners all were pointed to die, and he remained safe and alive, articulate by himself. Okay, so this is the kind of manipulative genius of Josephus Flavius, which will be integral part of the big hand behind Roman Christianity later. And then, of course, all of Josephus' Pharisaical partners died, remaining only Josephus. When Vespasian entered the temple or the synagogue that was arrested after it has been attacked, complaining to Josephus, why did the siege take so long? In other words, why did our betrayal plot take so long to work? Right? So Vespasian was impatient, which suggests that they were working on this plan way before the siege. Okay, and exposes the character of Josephus, that didn't mind to leave his Pharisee partners to death. Okay, and then Josephus rises from the floor to salute his new patron, and with open arms he praises the new emperor of Rome in a prophetical manner, because at that time Nero was either close to be murdered or was already dead. Therefore, Vespasian became the next emperor of Rome, right? And it's very remarkable, this prophetic aspect on the that composes the betrayal out of Josephus' performance aside Vespasian. Okay, and the prophecy was fulfilled. So beside the siege of Jotapata, the crucifixion of Isatis in Tecoa Herodia, Titus invades, defies, and takes over the temple of Jerusalem, whose literary and other sort of treasures are all stolen, and fall in the hands of Josephus, that is gonna offer them to the hands of the Flavians right before they were working in the Latin scriptures. Okay, so this is very important. Uh, Afterwards of the robbing of the temple, Titus sets fire in the temple of Jerusalem, and with his written sword he declares himself an enemy of Jewish culture, and with tremendous animosity he confronts the authority of Yahweh, right, which is the central Jewish cult, a Hebraic variation of the Egyptian Aton, the tetragram Aton, Yahweh, right? Displaying offenses, and making clear that Rome now is the master and that has supplanted the Jewish cult of the Elohim and Yahweh, defeated under the imperial power of Rome. Okay, so basically, one of Titus' subordinates sets fire in the temple of Jerusalem. The literary treasures and other treasures like gold and silver fall in the hand of Josephus, right? And this incredible animosity between the Roman emperor or general at the time, right? Titus is son of Vespasian, exposes a very a much earlier conflict coming from Athenist Egypt, right? Where amidst the Judite and the Levite cultures in Athenist Egypt, within the Saturnian orders related to this cult, okay? So that's why we see the hexagram of Saturn either in Judaism and in Rome, because at the time where the emperor and the pharaoh was being anointed with oil and consecrated Divi Filius, which is Messiah, there was a very, very deep conflict between the Hebraic Canaanites and the Macedonian, Greek, and Roman imperial orders for the supremacy and the title and the imperial power, basically, right? And of course this conflict perpasses the secret societies at that time, which are still where the present modern secret societies are based upon Athenist Egypt, okay? And within this conflict between the Hebraic and the Latin Saturnian orders, we have the origins and the animosity between Jewish and Christian culture, okay, including all the lies that we hear that from the Gentiles, from Rome, that the Jews crucified our Savior, right? And the Jewish conspiracy to control the world, which of course these are all lies, and that have its origins in imperial Egypt at the time when these emperors and pharaohs were consecrated Messiah in the temple of the sun, right? Solomon, right? And eventually the Latin orders with its Macedonian and Greek antecessors take power, uh, being incorporated in the Roman Empire and later in Roman Christianity. And that's why we have in the Vatican and in Rome so many Egyptian obelisks and Egyptian symbology. Okay, so this war between the Hebraic Canaanite culture and the Latin or Saturnian orders comes from imperial Egypt, okay, and it is in the core of the millennial animosity between Christians and Jews, making clear that Rome took over the world. So all of this talk of conspiracy and the rest is utterly nonsense. Okay. Afterwards, the robbing of the Temple of Jerusalem, pardon me. Um, so a great scandal registered uh, and written in the Arch of Titus is that event where Rome carries the spoils and all the riches that they stole from the Jewish temple, carrying the Jewish menorah, okay, in the hand of the Roman soldier, consecrating the power takeover by Rome in Judea through their let's call their takeover in the war in the Galilee that was inscribed in stone in the Arch of Titus. So we can see how proud these Latin secret orders are of their takeover of Judea through the Galilean War. Okay, and basically, of course, this implies that Rome became the prevailing power and modality, imperial modality of culture um, under the age of Pisces, and therefore corporative Roman Christianity became the main religion throughout all the age of Pisces, with the cult of the demiurge in its center. Okay, the demiurge is Jupiter Capitolino or Zeus, right? And it's about time to say that the Latin or Portuguese term Deus is nothing but a variation of the Greek Zeus. Okay, so people, and also Saint Peter is Jupiter. So people are worshiping Zeus as the demiurge for 2000s of years, right? Through this hegemony of Rome. Okay. In the process of capture of Masonic functions and titles, such as Saul, Simon Cephas, that becomes St. Paul and St. Peter, and its subversion under the cult of the demiurge, it includes there the authoritarian aspect already present in the Nazarene orders, that in Rome becomes the total submission of women under the Christian law, right, or the Christian dogma, right, that are eliminated from the participation within the mysteries and considered to be property of the husband, deeply backed by the theology of St. Paul and the Christian dogma as we read in the Gospels of St. Paul. Okay, because of course now we don't have uh, the term religion or religio that we have um, seen and analyzed in a previous course. Now this concept is not based anymore between the cult of Yahweh Elohim and through the law of Moses or the Torah, okay, and the Jewish population. With the victory of, with the power takeover of Rome, um, it will become a very different situation where the Torah is sort of put aside, and with the theology of the crucifixion and the resurrection, which is the payment of of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, in the cross for humanity's crimes, and the believers between in between comes the bondage through faith alone. So through faith alone in Jesus' payment for their crimes, the believers are tied or linked, right, from the term heligare, to the Christian dogma. So instead of the law of the Torah, now we have the Christian dogma. Okay? And there is a passage, maybe that Ralph Ellis quotes, maybe from the Talmud, that that Saul says that woman should be seen but not be heard. And so what happens is that the authoritarian tendencies within the Nazarene orders, from the censor that Simon Cephas delivered towards Mary Magdalene, which is a sort of a Jewish patriarchal tendency, this is picked by Saul Josephus and turned over in a greater degree when the Pauline theology basically uh, um, submits women in total bondage as property of their husband. Okay, and then women will not be allowed to hold office or be any kind of authority in any kind of a social position, right? And not to say about the whole sexual neurosis that Roman Christianity promotes, with that culture of confession and the control of people's intimacies, the marriage laws, the marriage rules, right? And above all, the neurosis towards sexuality, right? That aside the phenomena of total obedience, right? Because of course Roman Christianity as a demiurgic cult demands obedience from the believers. In case of disobedience of revelry, it delivers punishment, right? And this has its root, as Freud says, in Atonist Egypt, that is the surrendering of the sexual force under the cult of the demiurge, of the Aton, right? And the religious priests, with the dread of punishment from disobedience. So Roman Christianity inherits all of this, and as Nietzsche would say, Nietzsche is a big critic of Roman Christianity, would say that Rome has poisoned life in its spring. Where life springs like a water spring, there is the Roman Christian authorities poisoning from the spring, from the source of life, which is basically poisoning sexuality. And as a consequence, as we may know by now, there was the phenomena of tremendous guilt and bad conscience that has lasted for many millennia. Okay, and I would add that after the Latin patriarchy authorities have collapsed and the world was taken over by science, that kind of sexual guilt and the bad consciousness has been basically turned over into an explosion of sexuality, right? The turning of sexuality into a big commerce and industry known as the Venus and the Dionysian cult, which by no means is an evolution or an opposition to the previous oppression and repression. Actually, it is its natural consequence. So in one moment we have oppression, shame, and guilt, and the other moment we have an explosion, and sexuality becomes an incredible industry. So I see as the same phenomena in different phases. And no wonder one can verify that the same secret societies that are Latin are behind both phenomena. Okay? Yeah, the times where women were property of the husband, and of course all the husband would betray the women, and this is very known, to the time where sexuality explodes as an industrial commerce. So the same secret orders are machinating both phenomena in different phases of history. Okay. um, so yeah, the patriarchal and authoritarian tendencies within the Nazarenes are taken by Saul Josephus, right, through Simon Kepha's centering towards Mary Magdalene, and this will play a big role in the invention of Saint Peter, which is the Latin version of Simon Kepha's, that will become the right arm of Jesus Christ, that is the CEO of the corporation within the Latin theology. Okay. So patriarchy, contrary to what is commonly thought, did not eliminate the feminine orders from upside down, but it has incorporated its more predatory function coming from the tradition of the royal wives, which is an antecedent of the female Illuminati, as in the example of and of the evident and brutal experience through the construction of the city of Amarna in Imperial Egypt by Akhenaten and Nefertiti. So what I'm saying is that the female Illuminati remained within Roman Christianity. All one has to do is take a look in the feminine robes that the priests use, and all the symbology related to drugs, right? The red robes that are related to the magic mushroom, the Amanita muscaria, and so on, right? And all the cases of raping, of sexual scandals, which is typical in the Latin world. Okay. And modern cities like Brasilia in Brazil or Washington D.C. in the U.S., they are based directly through the secret orders, the Masonic orders, in the city of Amarna, that has built by Akhenaten and Nefertiti in the most violent and cruel way, right, through forced labor, when they were simply whipping the workers unto death. Okay, archaeologists found people buried in these cities that have worked to the bone, right? Work until death under the orders of the pharaoh. And Nefertiti was a very powerful and dangerous woman, a queen, that was the head of the royal wives, which is the female Illuminati from the time. So there's a whole history, a criminal history of the feminine and the presence of the royal wives and the female Illuminati within patriarchy that has not been told clearly. And even though it is present in the scriptures, right, when we read them correctly. So I refer to Genesis 1 and that passage that says, come, let us, interpreting, they say, remake man after our image and after likeness. So the Elohim are recreating humans through the Adam, right? ADM, and Elohim is a feminine plural, right? And also the whole symbology and terminology uh, within patriarchy, where there are many, many, many feminine symbols. Okay, and the person that has been doing this study in its greatest form and depths is Michael Tisario. Please take a look at his study on the female Illuminati, and there's a great deal there to learn from. Okay, so this is a very old story. It has never been told to us. We've been told that patriarchy is, which is toxic, no doubt, but it's all about the oppression of men. Well, this is not true. Okay, so the feminine orders have been within patriarchy since Sumerian times and then imperial Egyptian times through the royal wives, and one of the most famous is Nefertiti, but many Roman empresses and even modern day leaders are clearly serving this disorder. Okay, so the building of Amarna by Akhenaten and Nefertiti under the whip has broken into an exodus that has taken the Amarna dynasty elites to Rome amidst the Etruscans. Okay, when there has been prepared the emergence of Roman Christianity between the fusion of the Amarna dynasty, the Etruscans, and the Roman Empire. That is the root core of the Vatican and Roman Christianity. Right? And this story is actually even being told to us in codified ways within the corporative world. Okay. The invention of St. Paul. One of the great maneuvers, manipulations in the invention of the Apostle Paul was the making of the chronological chasm prevailing when the scriptures were removed from the war in the Galilee, transferring its fictitious reality to the year 10 AD, when the war has passed in the year 60 AD. So this is the chronological chasm performed by Vespasian, Titus, and Josephus. Okay, that is the manipulator machinations of the Flavians has been hidden in the invention of the Apostle Paul, that has been separated, the invention has been separated to any relation between Josephus and the Flavians. This manipulation was called the chronological chasm, as in the famous story of St. Paul in the road to Damascus. That has supposedly repented towards the apparition of Jesus Christ by his supposed persecutions, right? Which did happen, but the true reason of these persecutions were never told to us. Okay? And then St. Paul, from Saul, it becomes St. Paul in a sort of saintly figure chosen by Jesus Christ to become an apostle to the nations, eliminating the treacherous character and aspect of Josephus that was actually arresting all the adepts of the astrological cults within the Galilean region. Okay, so considering that this manipulation has lasted intact for 2000 and some years, we can say that in this case we have the success of the unbelievable, deceptive and treacherous genius of Rome. The calendar also has been falsified since uh, the year of inauguration of the month of Pisces, which is year 0 AD, has been considered the birth of Jesus, as the Capricorn solstice in December 25th, that is the birth of the sun, actually came from the Persian cult of Sol Invictus, related to Mithra, that has always been considered the birth of the imperial Messiah. So these are the machinations of Rome, right? The chronological chasm, the confusion between the entering of the month of Pisces with the birth of Jesus Christ, and also the manipulation between the birth of the sun in the Capricorn solstice, December 25th, with the birth of the Roman Egyptian imperial Messiah. Therefore, as we've seen in previous lectures, we can consider clearly that Roman Christianity is a combination between Atenist, imperial Egyptian, Messianism, aside with Persian influence, which is the whole extent of the Roman Empire at that time. Okay, way west into Heliopolis and all these Egyptian cities, to the Persian borders there, right? Aside fortifying the cult to the demiurge through the frauds within the Masonic titles, as a consequence of the power takeover in the Galilee by Rome, there were thousands of Jewish people in exile that lost their land, possessions and rights, as became enslaved after the siege of Jotapata, led by Vespasian, to be sent to death in the Roman Colosseum, okay, known as Flavian Amphitheater, including the financing of this amphitheater with the robbing and the theft of the spoils and the riches coming from the Temple of Jerusalem. So basically, when Titus set fire in the temple, Josephus carried all the literary treasures of the temple to put at the service of the Flavians, of course, his new patrons, as all the gold and the silver, the diamonds, whatever kind of riches were there, were sent to finance the building of the Roman Colosseum. Okay, an incredible story. And right afterwards, Vespasian was consecrated in the manner of the Egyptian pharaohs, and also the Atenist pharaohs, of course, and also the Macedonian, the Greek, and the Roman Caesars, consecrated a saint and an emperor Divifilius, a sort of a messianic figure, right? Taking the throne of Rome. And here is another very curious parallel between both sides at the Galilean War, because as Vespasian was a muleteer, he was not part of the Roman royals and aristocracy. He was a muleteer. He was a farmer that dwelt with mules, right? Well, it's said that Jesus, right, or Jesus, enters Jerusalem mounted on a mule. So exactly in the point where Rome and the Nazarenes clash as arch enemies, we have two muleteers. Okay, the hidden meaning of this I don't know, but I feel that this is very interesting to mention there. As the Roman elite, such as the chief of police Josephus Flavius and others, had their hairs very short cut and their beard clean shaven to distinguish themselves from the Pharisees and the Nazarenes, as we see in the slide. Okay, the whole metamorphosis from Josephus to from Josephus to Josephus Flavius, right? There is the emergence of the term barbarian to basically censor and incriminate the enemy amidst the Nazarenes that all were wearing long hair and long beards as their own style. Okay, and and even in Latin art, right? They don't hide this fact that Jesus is always long haired and long beard. Okay, so the term barbarian emerges to basically confirm the superiority of Rome by the very Romans that are calling their enemies in a pejorative sense, right, as barbarians. So when you hear the term barbarian, remember this simply means that these are the enemies of Rome, that Rome censured and disapproved, right? Because the Romans were short-haired and clean-shaven, right? And also we hear the term pagan, right, which is another Roman imperial term, which simply means referring to the people that lived in the countryside and were not submitted to the emperor's secret order and authority, right? Was not part of the club of the emperor, therefore they were pagans. So I thank you all. I hope you enjoyed the lecture. Please stay with us to the end of the course and see you in the next one. Thank you very much.